There we go, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, we are live in, I don't know if we're live on Facebook for sure. I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. We're trying to go live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time, but right now we're for sure on YouTube. I see it there. And we're live with another Kayfabe with Keaton. And of course, I'm Crusher Crossan. This guy's Kid of Rock. Is that your new thing now? Kid of Rock? Well, not
Yep.
new, but old like new again, right?
Kind of like,
That
yeah,
was your...
kind of like that, yeah.
So this is the Kid of Rock. Is that's gonna be that's your kind of your character?
Mm-hmm.
So Kid of Rock, Wrestling Revolution Keaton. I understand, Keaton, you were training with the adults last time at the training at NPW. How'd that go for you?
Well, I just showed them what the kind of rock was made of, You know, we done forward rolls and stuff, and all the usual stuff. But I learned some other cool stuff. I done a sunset flip, like a springboard sunset flip and stuff that I've never really done before.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of stuff I've never done before.
I mean, that was the first time you ever did with the adults, right?
Yeah, first time.
Training. Was that kind of nervous for you at first?
Yeah,
Yeah. How did you feel afterwards?
felt pretty rewarding, I suppose. Well,
Yeah.
it was rewarding and very painful the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, you felt it, I'm sure, right?
Yeah,
But do you like it?
yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, would you like to do it again then, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, well, of course you would. Of course you would. Yeah, I think that's great that you were in there with him. You got to get your feet. You got to, you know what? You got to start diving into the deep end, right?
Yeah.
Get out of the shallow end of the pool. Well, so we got a great show today. And then, of course, I don't know if you caught our forward show. I think you did, Keaton, right? We had John McCann filling in for Canary Kid. He'll be filling in for Canary for the next couple forward shows, NWF Forward. And we'll have a real good, interesting guest coming on our next forward. I can't wait to talk about. We'll talk about that when we get to the end. But as it is, today we got a guest. Keaton, tell us all about our guest today that we got coming in.
So today we'll have pro wrestling superfan. He's met all sorts of great pro wrestlers. We'll see a slideshow of that soon. He has such an incredible pro wrestling collection. When I went over to meet him before Love Wrestling, I couldn't help but go over and talk to him and ask him about it. And when he was telling me all the stuff, all his knowledge and stuff that he knew, I thought to myself, this guy's such a great guest to be having on my podcast. He's met some very big and famous wrestlers. He knows a lot of them, and he also makes figures himself of different Cobra Kai characters and stuff like that. But so he's pro wrestling superfan, collector of AAA and CMLL figures. Paul Kreese. He's worked for promotions like 1PW and stuff like that. So he's worked from 2005 in pro wrestling, just doing different stuff.
And now, does he collect like just figures only, or does he collect like all sorts of memorabilia?
I think it's just mostly figures.
Mostly figures. Okay. Yes, that's cool. And then, and he has probably quite. What, are you there, Keaton? Your video went there.
Yeah,
You're back.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that sounds very interesting. So yeah, and then we like Keaton said, we have like a bit of a slideshow video to play that can show a lot of his collection and stuff too. A lot of pictures. So we'll see that as well. And of course, everybody can just come along with your comments. And I generally let Keaton start things off because I don't know a whole lot about his guests. And then as I have questions, I'll chime in too. And then we'll go from there. So let's get the show on the road. Let's bring our guest in. This is Paul Kreese, and let's add him in. There you are. Welcome in, Paul.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's great to have you for yes. Like I said, I'm going to let Keaton start up with the questions, and then when I have them, I'll bring them in too, and I'll also bring in comments if we get any comments as we go as well. So Keaton, it's all yours.
So Paul, thanks very much for coming on today. It's a pleasure to be having you on. I want to know. So what's your first memory of wrestling?
Oh, so my first memory of wrestling. This is where I think drives my collecting habits. My first memory is literally on my primary school playground. I see some of the boys. They've got the Hasbro figures. If you remember the Hasbro figures, and they're playing with. I think they're playing with like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the Ultimate Warrior figures. And I'm just thinking, they look cool toys. What are they? And so that I actually got drawn into the toys before the wrestling. And most people get drawn into the wrestling somehow and then go, oh, there's merchandise to buy. So from then on, I just got joining that little group. Found that you could buy some of these, and asked like, what actually is wrestling? Made a new friend from it. Went around to his house, and he started showing me. I think it was something like SummerSlam '93. And we were there just watching it. I was hooked instantly. So I was slightly later than children my age to get into wrestling at that time. But yeah, ever since then, it's just been a love of wrestling and collecting going hand in hand.
And Paul, you don't have to answer, but how old are you?
I'm 41, nearly.
41. So yeah, so in 93, then you would have been like, how old then?
I was 9.
9. So yeah, still that's a fairly normal age to get into wrestling then, I would say. Yeah.
I just like a few of my friends who were into wrestling, they'd been in like since 5 or 6, since like SummerSlam '92 or a little bit earlier, and they'd seen like Hulk Hogan v Sergeant Slaughter. And obviously, I'd missed that, but it was only a couple of years ago. So of course, you always go back cataloguing anyway. And back in those days, videotapes took about 9 months to be published anyway, or produced from the actual event. It wasn't like it is today, where you can literally just log on and watch the event from whenever it was. So it didn't take that long to catch up on everything, and it was just absolutely hooked.
So Keaton said you collect figures mainly, and I'm thinking like what I remember for figures in the 80s, there was basically two prominent figures. There was the WWF ones, which were I don't remember the name of the company, but they're LGN. The big LGN, a big rubber. Yep. They don't move. And then
No.
there was the Remco line, which was AWA, which they were all articulate. And we always liked the Remco better as kids because you could do things with them, where the WWF guys are just these big rubber things, that didn't do anything. And that was I always wondered why wouldn't you make them more, movable?
I think that's one of the reasons that LJN eventually lost their contract in 1988 and 89. And then eventually in 1990, Hasbro took over. They actually started in 89, but it took them a year to produce the first line. And they went on a smaller scale, movable, and they became the most iconic wrestling figure of all time. I think that's hard to dispute when you think about Hasbro's. But LJN's, as you know, Crusher, they were obviously widely available in the United States, but not here. And so I started collecting them in around the year sort of 2001, 2002, when I met a friend online who had a store in Allentown, Pennsylvania, on the East Coast that way on. And I just started trading with him, and I eventually ended up getting a full collection of those LJNs. And that's actually where I displayed them at the For the Love of Wrestling, the second one in Liverpool. So I was finally pleased to get my collection fully out on display for everyone to see.
So do you have like every character that was ever made?
Yeah, yeah. Plus,
wow.
Like weird variations and copies of prototypes that I've managed to get my hands on. Yeah.
Wow, that's got to be a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the wrestling habit kicks in, really. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I think I wanted to do for the Love of Wrestling events, and that's obviously where I met Keaton. It's like I've got all this stuff, and yeah, I can display it at home or take pictures and go on Instagram, but it's the one time a year that I can go set up a collection and talk to people about it, and that's important when you're a collector, to actually discuss it and meet like-minded friends and fans of it. So that's where I went with it. But yeah, the Remco figures that you talk about as well, I fully agree with you in terms of the articulation. Remco, they weren't as in terms of high quality, but they had like what they call soft goods accessories on clothing on them. They were modeled off the He-Man that Remco did, like the bootleg He-Man line.
Right.
They're a bit of a bootleg company, really, that kind of got, I don't know if it's fair to say, kind of got lucky with getting like licenses. They ended up getting the Karate Kid license, and they ended up, and they did like some ninja kind of figures that were just more like stuff you'd find in your dollar store or your pound shops here, that kind of stuff you'd find at a seaside gift shop, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The guy's name was Steve Rothenberg or something like that did that with Remco, and he's doing it again now with Powertown figures. He's doing it again, and the Powertown figures are great, but they have an issue with getting orders completed right now, though. It's a big, huge debate right now on the whole. Because I was collecting the Powertown guys, and I'm still waiting for order from over a year and a half ago.
Have you got any of them at all?
I got the first series 1, and I got the Kerry Von Erich special series that they did, the white one. I forget what they call it. And then from that point on, now we're waiting for everything else to get completed. It's like they have our orders, and they've had them for a while, and I'm not the only one. We're all waiting.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I really wanted the Missing Link that they were doing.
Yeah, that's part of the new series too.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's Steve somebody like But I think with Remco coming back, I think that's really cool. We actually got on our Cobra Kai group. We actually got one of the guys that did the artwork, the original artwork for the wrestling and the Karate Kid line as well. And we occasionally speak to him. He sometimes wants to speak, sometimes doesn't, which is fair. But he has some really good knowledge as well. I wish them luck. I mean, the Powertown figures really do look head and shoulders above others in terms of quality and build quality, but it's no good if you're not getting them distributed.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's China distributors, and I think it's with the tariffs and everything else going on. And I think there's just all sorts of issues that have happened over here in the United States. It's causing because they all come into the U.S. and then they ship from here worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there now doing the retro figures and retro figure lines, and I mean, to me, I think it's a great time to be a wrestling figure fan.
Yeah.
But some of the companies really take off and hit the ground running, and they get their distribution just right, and then some of them just don't. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Grapplers and Gimmicks, guy called Mitch Rulston. He's done some. He focuses pretty much on Hasbro-esque style figures. and he tries and does characters that weren't made, and he's really hit the market with that, and he knocks them out really quickly. Whereas you look at zombie toys, they're really good, don't get me wrong, but they had the same issues to start with and teething troubles. But no, I mean, there's some really good lines out there.
You know, on the Remco figures, it's really interesting because I remember as a kid, you know, they were getting closeouts on them. You could go to like the liquidators and you could pick these things up for like $1 in the package and everything. And it's like, I'm like, well, do we really want these? Now, if I would have just loaded up on them because they're so valuable, if they're still in the packaging and everything, you know, I'm sure it's like that with everything, right? When it comes to figures.
It is. But
Yeah.
I think with those ones in particular, because I think they went so cheap, as you say, they've
Yeah.
become so rare. And that's a bit of an oxymoron, really. But I think because they were so cheap, maybe they got destroyed. Who knows? You know, if they were that or
Sure.
just given away or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, carded some of that last line carded with like the original Sheik, Nod the Barbarian, which was John Nod the Berserker later.
Yeah, that's the one that's the most expensive, right? I think it goes for like
Right.
$7,000. I thought I seen somewhere.
I think some of the carded ones, yeah, they're well in excess of 4,000 to 5,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Nord the Barbarian's not like a big. I don't know if you've heard of him, Keaton, but he was a kind of like a Bruiser Brody knockoff almost. But he was
Yeah, no, he is.
he was a good guy and everything. In fact, he was in Anoka, as a matter of fact, so I kind of knew of him quite a bit, you know. And he worked with Sharky, so I knew him a little bit that way. But he was a nice guy. But his like what I'm trying to say is he wasn't like a big mainstream wrestler that like really made it. But his character is so valuable as a collector, you know, a figure. It's kind of funny that way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's strange how certain wrestling figures are worth an absolute fortune. It means nothing about the character. It's just if it's the last one in the line. I mean, I collect the WCW Galoob line, and the rarest is Big Josh. People go crazy over Big Josh. He later became Doink the Clown, but nobody really remembers Big Josh that much. You know, he was in for maybe a year and a half as a lumberjack, and that was it.
Yeah.
But John Nord, he's hopefully doing an appearance at the Legends convention that I'm going to in Charlotte at the end of July. He was ill last year, and I hope he's feeling better now, because I know he was quite ill last year, and it's nice to see that he's coming back and he's making appearances again.
Yeah, I think he's still in Minnesota, and everything. Yeah, as far as where he lives and everything.
Yeah, he's north, isn't he? He's definitely north that way.
Yeah, on the north side of the states. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Keaton. I know we rambled there a little bit with figures. I know you got questions that are burning, so
get in that.
Oh no, that was interesting to hear. But so the first time you ever got into wrestling was actually viewing figures, which is something a lot of kids would have, you know, like viewing different figures. That's how they got into their TV shows and stuff. But so you first got into it with viewing figures, and Hornswoggle people's been like that. So do you think that is going to be a big effect on you as a wrestling fan?
Yeah, I think so, because I would see these different figures, different toys, and you trade them with your friends, and just like any kids do, you know, you take them to school, swap them, get into trouble for getting them out in class, that kind of thing, and then eventually you'd be like, I like that guy. Look at his outfit. I remember getting Bam Bam Bigelow from Argos. If you remember the Argos, obviously Argos is still a store here, but they used to have 3 figures in. And they were just one supplied, and you never knew which one you were going to get, and you had to buy it first, then they brought it out to you. And I'd got Bam Bam Bigelow one day, and I took it to school, and it instantly made me the most popular kid, because I'd got like the brand new figure, and it was just stuff like that. And I'm like, this guy's got tattoos on his skull, he's got a flaming costume, you know, it's bright, it's colourful, it's toyetic, and then it just became a thing where I've got to see him wrestle now. I want to see him wrestle. And I saw an Undertaker figure, and everyone said, oh, he does the Tombstone. I'm thinking, what's the Tombstone? So I had to go and watch an Undertaker match to watch the Tombstone. And it just carried on like that. It really did.
And to this day, you still do that?
No, not quite. No, they're more for sale. So they're more for show. I do customize them, but no, I mean, if you've
so when you say customize them, you like get them repainted or retouched different? How do you customize them exactly?
So basically, I mean, we touched on it earlier when we said about there's companies now making figures of guys we never had and characters we never had.
Yeah.
But over the last sort of 15 years, I've always wanted to make those figures of guys I've never had. So I've been doing that myself for my own personal collection for years, just through modeling and painting. So, you know, it might be, I feel like that guy off Toy Story, you know, the nasty boy when he's chopping them all up and breaking all the toys up. And sometimes
so kind of like when I made my own figure of me, kind of like this is what you're doing. Same thing, right? Yeah, and
absolutely.
I know that's a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. You gotta get different figures to get, okay, this part will work, this torso will work, these legs will work, and you gotta mix and match. And
precisely, that's it. That's exactly what happens. Yeah, and I've got like a shed full of parts of different bodies and
I know.
I'm thinking, will that work? Will that work? And then
heads are always the hardest. And I had 3D printed my head because I just couldn't find a head to do it, you know. But 3D printing heads are not, you know, to get somebody to do that for you, that's the expensive part of the whole thing.
It is. Yeah, I mean, printing it costs virtually nothing. It's actually getting somebody to design it for you, isn't it?
Yeah, the designing of it.
And it's all new now. I mean, back, you know, over the last 15 years or so, I've learned how to cast using silicon casting and casting resin, and you replicate parts and you can change parts. But now, I mean, these designers that are out there that you can buy the files, I mean, the likenesses are superb, and you can just, as you say, it costs a lot of money to get the heads done. But when you get the heads made and printed, I mean, you can make any figure and character you want. I mean, that really is the future.
Yeah, because like everything else, like you said, you can find out there's enough characters out there of action, you know, figures that you can mix and match, and you can make up whatever you want. It's just the head that's the hardest. And sometimes you can find heads that are actually going to work, and you can just alter them, and you kind of, I've taken like exact nice, taken different hair off, or just you know, you know, I'm sure you've done the same to try to.
Exactly what we do.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, a funny story. That's what Remco used to do. They had a lot of their different lines out there, and they'd sometimes use the exact same head, or they would change it slightly. They've used the Nod the Barbarian head on a Secret of the Ninja line and put some sort of like hair extension coming out the top of his head. But the rest of the head's the same. So you could just literally cut that off and use the head and have your custom Nod the Barbarian. Remco were just a cheap toy company that, you know, cut corners, but why not, you know? They sell a lot.
You know, it's interesting. The guy who did that, just so people understand, the guy, because I seen a documentary on it. The one who came up with Remco, who did Remco, he actually went to Vince first, and he had a deal with Vince to do the action line for WWF. He was going to do all that, and he even has the prototypes of the guys that he made for them. But then Vince undercut him and went to LGN or whatever, and got a deal with them and just kind of left him out. So that's what happened to that Steve guy. And then what he did is he went to Vern and said, "Hey, you know, I got this idea." And so Vern did it with him, and then he started signing. That's why there's so many NWA guys in there, because Steve would go to all the wrestlers, say, "Hey, sign the contract, we'll get you figure," and done. That's how you get Ric Flair and all these other guys in there, you know.
They're so good. I mean, they are so good. I mean, when you hold them and the fact that they put like cloth robes on them, cloth jackets, cloth accessories, they were just classic 80s toys. I mean, they really are nice items. And okay, it wasn't the lucrative WWF deal, but it was still you know, something really iconic.
And then I heard the reason that LGN figures are so big is because they weren't supposed to be. That was just for the prototype to show them what they were going to be, but they were supposed to make them smaller. While they liked the way they were big, and so they had to go that way with it. Then some story behind it.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, usually they a figure originally they'll do what they call a two-up, which literally means you multiply all the dimensions by 2, so it becomes an 8-inch figure wider. And what the artist can do then is paint it, because painting on a 4-inch figure is much harder than painting on an 8-inch figure, and you can get the attire correct as you want it. And then obviously the factories still, because they were still made in different parts in China and et cetera, then they can obviously do what they need to do from their end. But the artist, the one that makes the prototypes, they need a two-up figure. And they do that with Hasbro as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how but how it slipped through where they had to make them all big. There's some story, and I can't remember how it went, but it was something to do with they were prototypes. They weren't meant to be that big, but they
I've
ended up
heard something
getting
similar
that
to
big.
that. Yeah,
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 just kind of interesting.
it
So what
is.
else we got, Keaton?
Yeah, so I was wondering. So you've mentioned there are obviously collecting wrestling figures. I didn't know you had so much of a WWF collection. So at what point did you get your AAA collection and CMLL?
So eBay really. I met a friend, as I think I told you about earlier, Keaton, the guy from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Name's Bud Carson, great guy, really well known and respected. I've got to get his name out there because he is just a genuinely good man. He used to have a store in Allentown next to the Wild Simone's training center, actually. And he used to get a lot of guys come over there and do autographs and things. And he had a website. And basically, when eBay was just in its infancy, I was buying a little bit off eBay. And then I started to do some deals with him. I emailed him through his website, and then we actually started ringing each other for a short while, as expensive as it was back then, to ring somebody. Got into all of that, got into exchanging LJN figures for Galoob figures. And then on eBay, I started just exploring all these other kinds of wrestling figures that were made. And there was a guy in Colorado called John Daly. And I don't know if he collected them or if he bought like a load for himself and then maybe picked the collection out and then sold the others. I don't know quite what he did. But he would list whatever he didn't want on eBay. And the first one was Heavy Metal, who I believe was the son of one of the referees in AAA in the mid-90s. And I just love the figure because, again, I'm a toy guy, not necessarily directly into wrestling to start with. I'm just like, I love that figure. Where's this from? What is it? It looks like a CMLL size figure. It looks like the San Francisco toy makers size figures that they all did in the mid-90s. And you could tell it was sort of made to go along with that line. And I bought the Heavy Metal line, and just like anything with me, if I find a figure that I like, I'll do my research. I'm like, right, what else have they made? How many was in the set? You know, are there any variants? How valuable are they? And I got to a point where I was buying a few off John, and then my memory's woolly, but basically there was there's 12 in that set that you saw for the love of wrestling, and 7 aren't very rare, and 5 are, and I don't know why that's the case. It just is. But the 5 that are really rare is Psychosis. He's a lot rarer to get nice because he's got the fins on his attire as well, and they snap off really quickly. You got to remember these were Mexican toys that were just thrown around and sold extremely cheaply as well. Rey Mysterio was in there, Blue Panther, Mascara Sagrada, and Fuerza Guerrera, I believe, the 5 really rare ones. And so, I honestly, I can't remember how or who, but I got a deal on all 5. And I think I ended up paying about they worked out about £200 shipped for all 5, like £40 each. Now back then it was like, oh, but you're getting them all at once, and now they're like worth that each at least. So
Yeah.
I was quite happy to get them, and they are really rare.
Well, Keaton, I'm going to put in this watch line we have that's going to show some of Paul's collection and everything. So we'll keep talking.
Yeah, they were really popular for the love of wrestling. A lot of people hadn't seen them before or knew about them. And you know, a couple of people said, "Oh, I've got the odd one in the UK," but again, in the UK, you just don't have that kind of these complete collections, and I've worked hard to get them.
So, what are we watching here, guys? This is like, it looks like a convention.
Yeah, this is for the love of wrestling.
Okay, for the love of wrestling. All right.
And I'm next to this bell guy. We were fortunate enough to be placed opposite where the guys were doing the signings as well. So that was really cool because they would come over when it was quieter and have a look.
And that's yours there?
Yeah, that's my Japanese wrestling figure collection.
I think this was my video as well.
Japanese wrestlers. What do you call the one who?
You can hear us talking through it.
Yeah, people think WCW is the first of one. It's not.
Oh, that's cool.
That's such a good collection as well.
WCW and Talk about the Rey Mysterio figure. That was the first ever official Rey Mysterio figure. All the hundreds he's had made. That's the first one.
That's awesome. Would you say that the AAA figures are your favorite collections?
Oh, that's a hard question. It was certainly one of my favorite collections. I love the Japanese stuff though. Like there, you can see Sonny Ono looking at them as well. They are, you saw the Japanese figures. They are so detailed that it's hard not to like them. I really like the ECW line as well. I'm hoping I can go back next year and show the ECW line off. But it's really hard to make me choose. I love the AAA collection. That's all I can say. I absolutely adore them. And yeah, there's a few pictures of me meeting some wrestlers last year's convention in
Marty
Charlotte.
Jannetty, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Fabulous Rougeos. That was
big
Dennis
names.
Condroy from Midnight Express.
Okay.
Coco Beware.
Coco Beware, I was going to say. Look like him.
Yeah, Coco Beware. Charles Robinson.
Charles Robinson just walking around. He wasn't allowed to obviously charge for signing or anything, but there he was, and it was great to get a picture with him. George South.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Dangerous Danny Davis, the heel referee.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had a few drinks with El Hebner that night. Yeah.
Jake the Snake.
Is that Jake the Snake? Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Enzo.
Yeah, that was last year's. And then
Swoggle
came over
Vita?
to my stall to look.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
because he's really into collecting as well. So he came over and had a really good chat to us. That's my son with Ken Shamrock.
Sergeant Slaughter, you know the story why he ended up leaving the WWF in this heyday, and it was all due to his line with G.I. Joe.
Yes.
And the toy line and everything, because Vince, everything had to go through his toy line, and Slaughter's like, no, I already got the steel sign with these guys. And so Vince says we're going to have to part ways then. So he let Slaughter go.
And you think for him to have left Vince, that must have been a heck of a deal.
Yeah, and of course Vern took him right in.
Mm-hmm.
There was a few guys that surprised us that came to the AWA. Slaughter was one, and Jimmy Snuka was another one. It's like all of a sudden Snuka left, and I'm still not sure why that happened. But those are the two guys that kind of surprised us back in the day.
Yeah,
leaving the WWF.
You met Rhino and Ruby Soho at Jennifer McDonald's?
Sorry?
That's what it looked like. Did you just meet Rhino and Ruby Soho at Jennifer McDonald's?
No, it was Rhino, I think, and then John Morrison. And there's Val Venus. We were at a barbecue. There's a nasty boy signing my my Hasbro shirt.
Yeah.
And you said these are just some of the pictures from For the Love of Wrestling #2, I believe. These are in Liverpool. And that was from the British Bulldog's daughter there.
And what do you think was your favorite meet and greet you've ever had?
Oh, I've met so many now. There's been some really good ones. There's been some really good Cobra Kai ones. Martin Cove, who plays John Kreese, obviously the namesake there, he was fantastic to meet. In wrestling, there's been quite a lot. I mean, you saw one of James Storm up there recently. That was from a couple of years ago. We went and played Crazy Golf in Lincoln before a 1PW show that night, or the night before, and that was phenomenal. There's been some really good, really good meets in the time that I've met people. I mean, I've made friends with quite a few people as well. You'll have heard of Corey Graves, who's the commentator on in WWE right now. He used to be a fantastic wrestler called Sterling James Keenan. I mean, he was he is loaded with talent. I always knew he was. Verbally, he's loaded with talent, and he was a fantastic wrestler as well. Not many people know that. You've got to go back and find his stuff, but he was a really good wrestler. And I became friends with him. And his brother Sam Adonis, who actually wrestles in Mexico, and now he's wrestled for years. I've become friends with those guys as well. So I've become friends with a few and had some really good meet and greet experiences. Bret Hart was a really sweet meet and greet experience back in 1PW. Basically, a lot of the wrestlers had just we bought a lot of pizzas in. I think we bought about 30 pizzas, and they were massive. And you were meant to share them, but some of the wrestlers were just taking like, and I won't name names, they were just taking like the full 18-inch pizza for themselves. And we didn't have any. The ring crew didn't have any. And I just said to my friend Steve, I'm like, oh, there's no pizza left. And Bret Hart actually overheard us and said, here, share mine. And we actually sat, stood with him and had like a slice of pizza and with Bret Hart. So that's a pretty cool memory, you know.
Yeah.
How awesome was that?
Yeah, and it was a genuinely nice guy. He saw what was going on. He saw all these guys taking him, you know, and I thought that was really classy.
Yeah.
Claudio Castagnoli's
Yes, yeah. Chris Hero. He's a figure collector and toy guy as well. Hardcore Holly.
Alistair Black.
Yeah. As Tommy End, as he was known then. Oh, look at my hair. It's
D'Lo
curly
Brown.
there, yeah. Yeah. D'Lo's a really nice guy, and I know him really, really well. That's Swerve Strickland, I believe. Not that guy.
Swerve, he looks different.
I guess I can bring some of these comments in while we're watching too. I notice they're coming in. So,
Will Ospreay.
Darren says, Keaton, would you describe yourself as a collector? How many figures have you?
Yeah, definitely describe myself as a collector. If I had to name the amount of figures I have, I'd say maybe about 100 figures. It's quite a lot, like, but I've collected them from I was 5, so.
Do you keep them, are they out of the package or do you keep them in the package?
Some in, some out. When I was a kid, obviously, like when I say a kid, when I was younger, obviously I would have just, you know, when you were younger, you would have just opened the box and whipped it open, and not realized how much money it could have been years down the line. But now I've kind of opened some of them. It depends how valuable the box is.
Yeah.
Same. That's exactly what I do. If they're like a legendary figure, like a figure of a legend in the past, I'll try and keep them carded. If they're a more modern character, as long as they're not an exclusive or anything, I'll pull them off the package. You just can't store them. There's just so many. You know, you'd run out of room.
Oh, here's a question then from Scenic Spots for you, Paul. He missed the start. He said, Paul, did you ever try wrestling? Did you ever try to get into wrestling?
I tried like once or twice while I was working at 1PW. I tried with a local company in Hull, and I didn't particularly like the person. There was a lot of people who said, "Oh, he's not a very good trainer," and you know that kind of thing. And I just sort of got out of it. And then they went to schools that they were now, you know. And I really, really liked the backstage stuff. That's what I really like. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed learning about how the production elements. I like listening to how matches were put together.
Yeah.
You know, my role was literally being backstage, helping the guys out when they needed help, making sure they got back to the hotel okay, because obviously they weren't driving, and just making sure that if they needed anything, I was there, kind of thing. And I got to talk to a lot of people and just learn from them, and that's sort of the element that I liked. So
Sure.
something backstage,
Well,
I did like security where I'd run in, and I took a few bumps through that, but that I never got into anything more than that.
but when you said you started trying and you didn't like the way it was going, was it one of these trainers that were kind of like a drill sergeant type training, or was it just kind of rough around the edges, or?
No, he was just dodgy. He was just ropey. He'd make false promises, and he tried selling insurance, and there wasn't any insurance, and he'd try and get different bits of money.
Oh, so just kind of shady.
Yeah, just shady. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all it was, and the fact that everyone else was saying, "Oh no, he's not good or whatever," and I was just like, you know what, I'm kind of done with it. So, and to be fair, it never really interested me because I'm not overly athletic, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm not. But I always enjoyed just listening to it all and watching it all, observing. I feel you learn an awful lot when you do that.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy putting stuff together. I mean, I remember Ricky Reyes suggested to me in May 2006, well, we've had a match on night one, but in the tag team match, with Rocky Romero against Storm and Landstock. I forget who Landstock was with, but there's no one else to have a match with tonight, you know. And he says, "Do you reckon we could get a match?" So I went to the promoter and try and put that match together. And so it was little things like that that I really enjoyed doing. And then sort of basically I did a lot of the if you remember, if you've heard of Wolf Herman, he was in ECW for a while, but in 1PW, there he is right there, and he came out with a flaming torch, and I was the guy that had to put the flaming torch out. So it was just small bits, but I was the one entrusted with that. I was the one entrusted to do certain things backstage. I was the one entrusted to get the coach to the airport when we were actually using coaches to get them all and going on the different terminals, getting them in. I mean, I had people with me as well. But
so you kind of like more of the production back end environment, of kind of just overseeing the behind the scenes of the production side of it.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like. Yeah. There's people, there's people, you know, every indie fed needs people like that. Even as small as the fed is, they need to have somebody that can do that kind of stuff.
Of course you do, because I think if you just have actual talent doing everything, it becomes toxic as well, because everyone's out for themselves. So you do need people, you know, backstage. I mean, my friend's got a small company in West Yorkshire called Firestar Championship Wrestling, Rob, and he's trying to get his company going. And he keeps saying to me, "Oh, but you could do, you know, you're really good at promos. You can come and help us." And it's just for me, it's just time. I teach full time, you know, so I would like to try and get into a little bit of it again. And I did go to a few of his training sessions, but just to help people out. It is fun.
Yeah,
it's where I want to be.
Here's another one. You have met some massive names by the looks of things. Who was your most memorable meet and greet out of all the people you've met up with?
I think Ric Flair. So we're on PW. There was a holding room for Ric Flair, and the door opened, and he came through, and he looked straight. I was about to leave because I thought, "Oh, I've got to go and do something." And as I've opened the door, he's there. And so I'm like, the first person he sees as he comes these stairs, and he goes, "Oh, hi, it's great to meet you. I'm Ric Flair." And he puts his hand out, and I'm like, "Yeah, I know." In my head, I'm like, "Yeah, I know exactly who you are." You know, professionally, I was like, "Oh, it's great to meet you. Hi, I'm Paul." But in my head, I'm like, "Yeah, I know exactly who you are." That was pretty cool. That was a really good memory. And then,
but Flair was good though. He gave you time and everything, because a lot of times people have said that he's kind of rushed through them or kind of overlooked them. With you, he's pretty cool.
I was backstage with him, so I didn't actually meet him at an actual meet and greet. There's been so many that I've met in meet and greets and at the conventions. Bill Goldberg was really nice, really nice guy. The person I went with, he'd given her a free, actually, because it was her birthday, he'd given her a free promo, and I thought that was a really nice thing for him to do. And then, you know, and I was chatting to him about that. That was really good. Kane was really nice actually when I met him. I'd actually stumbled my words, so like memorable when you're talking about a memorable meet and greet. We'd queued at Smith's Toys for Kane, and I put a promo in front of him. He's there signing it. I printed a photo for him to sign, and I said, "Oh, it's great to meet you. You've always been a really big fan of mine." And I thought, no. I've always been a really big fan of yours, right? So he stops and he looks up and he's got that like the mask on, and he goes, "Huh?" And I went, "No, I've always been a really big fan of yours." And he goes, "Hey man, you never know. And he carried on signing, and it was funny though, because I've been in that line for like 2.5 hours or whatever it is waiting. And I'm just trying to say something nice as he's signing my promo, like you do. You know, we've all done it. We've all been there and said something to the wrestler. And yeah, you've always been a really big fan of mine. Yeah.
Well, and on this note, then, what was your worst meet and greet for all three of us here, and why? So, what would be your worst meet and greet? So, let's start with you, Paul.
Brutus Beefcake.
Brutus Beefcake, and what happened there?
So, it's World's Comic Con. We've got his promo photos lined up, and he's got one at the back where there's him and the Ultimate Warrior. They were in a short-lived tag team, and it's got the Ultimate Warrior signature on it, but it's right at the back. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, obviously he's passed at that point. So I just said to him, is that the Ultimate Warrior signature on it? And he goes, yeah, it is. And I said, oh, so when did you get that? And he said something like, oh, I got it done before he passed. So I was like, right. And I said, how much was that? And it was double what his autograph was. He just goes, oh, they're 40. Which, when you look at it now, it's not bad at all anyway, because that's how much we pay these days. But I was talking when everyone used to be £15 in the mid-teens and a £20
Mhm.
autograph. So I'm thinking 40. Do I do it? Do I do it? And I thought, well, yeah. And then as soon as I got it, he's given me it. He's pulled another one out, and they're a print. So it's a photocopy of an
Oh,
original.
it's not the actual signature, and you thought it was.
But he told me it was.
Yeah.
And I was mad about that. I mean, you should have known. People go, yeah, you should have known that was never that. But he said it was. So you take people at the word. He said, oh, yeah. I mean, technically, he wasn't lying. He had signed it in the past. Kind of shady. He had signed it, but it was a different photo, and then he's photocopied that one. I mean, it still looks cool as hell. It really does look cool as hell. And when I look back, I don't really regret it. But it was the fact that I've done, as you know, I think it was TSZ Videos said you've met a lot of people. Yeah, I have met a lot of people, and people no one's done that to me before. So
Right.
I wasn't happy.
No, I wouldn't be either. And then Keaton, what about you?
Without a doubt, Bubba Ray Dudley.
Bubba
from
Ray,
the
what
Dudley
happened?
Boys.
What happened with him?
So I went to a For Love of Wrestling convention. It was in Manchester the year before I met you, and I asked him to do an introduction to my YouTube channel. So just to say, hey guys, and then him to say it's Wrestling Revolution Keaton YouTube channel. So Devon Dudley was such a nice guy because I was meeting both Dudleys. Devon Dudley was such a nice guy. He was so nice. Always he talked away to me for ages, and he was talking away. Such a nice guy, and so he was doing an introduction to my YouTube channel. And Bubba Ray Dudley was refusing to say anything. So it turned out that it was just Devon Dudley saying everything, and all Bubba Ray Dudley actually refused, literally refused to say it, even though he was getting paid like £60 for it, and he refused to say them lines saying Devon get the tables. So he refused to give an introduction to my YouTube channel. All he said to say was Devon, and then Devon Dudley had to say the rest of it. But even though he was paid like £60 each to say that introduction to my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've met Bubba Ray Dudley at the exact same event, and he's just not a very personable guy. I mean, I know he's got a fairly decent. I think he does a podcast now himself, and I mean, I agree with a lot of what he says actually when I read some of his comments, but he's not very personable. No, I mean, he wasn't rude to me. Devon was really welcoming. He was shaking your hand. Hey, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. And Bubba was just like, all right, what's your name? Yep. And it was, but then again, to be fair, there's a lot of people like that I've met like that in the past that are just like, so,
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not a good experience, Keaton, at all. No, that's wrong.
No.
No, and I haven't really done a lot of meet and greets, but I do remember when I did a convention, and I was in Maryland, and we did an we were promoting their book and documentary, The Untold Story, and we had a booth, and next to us was Abdullah the Butcher, who was a really nice guy. Like we got to know him because we were next to him, and he just was very personable with us, and he got to like us and everything. So we just had a good relationship with him. But kitty corner from me was Larry Zbyszko, and Zbyszko would just schmuck us. He wouldn't even acknowledge us over there. He was just the opposite of Abdullah. And so it's like you can see where these personalities and guys can be different for whatever reason. And Zbyszko wasn't I don't know why he was, but he's just being kind of like a schmuck, in the words of Canary Kid. He was just being distant with us, where Abdullah was like totally opposite. And they're the two that were right next to me. The only other thing I can say as far as encounter and somebody was just when I walked in on Billy Robinson, when him and Baron Von Raschke. So they were doing some small AWA card at our local town, and I knew where the dressing rooms were. So I thought, God, maybe there's somebody in there. So I just opened the dressing room door, and I opened it in on Billy Robinson and Baron Von Raschke going over their match. And I'm 12 years old, and I opened the door. Baron just looked up at me and didn't say anything, but Robinson looked at me and said, "Can you give us a little bit of privacy, please?" Yeah, he just like, and from that point on, I'm like, you are such a jerk. I never liked Billy Robinson since, but he was just, it was kayfabe days, that he was just doing his job, In kayfabe days, it didn't matter if you were 12 years old or 35 or 50, they're going to treat you the same.
Yeah, you could probably forgive him for that. A little bit.
What's that?
You could probably forgive him for that,
Yeah, yeah. He was just, somebody like him in his era. That's how it was. That was what you did. You protected the business.
Yeah.
Baga says, can people hire you to set up the display at the likes of a wrestler's reunion?
I mean, I do it for free. I just enjoy doing it because I'm a collector. My thought process behind it was, when I went to the first For the Love of Wrestling event, I saw that people had done it already. There was a really good guy. He had a really good display of Hasbro figures. I forget his name. He's from Leicester way on, and he's got them all, and they're all carded, and he puts them all on display for everyone to see. He had an amazing display. James, I think his name was. Forgive me if I've got that wrong. But since then, I'm like, I want to do that. I want to, the reason I do it is just so I can talk about my collection and meet like-minded fans. So, I just do it for free. I just take one of my collections down each year. I've got a different theme each year, a different collection, and so I just enjoy doing that. I don't charge.
Okay, so there's your answer there. And then Mighty Molly says, who was the biggest prima donna, and what were their weirdest demands?
Great question. Teddy Hart. Yeah. Teddy Hart. Yeah, strange guy. Hell of a wrestler. So I picked him up from the airport. Straight away, I got the question of, where can I find something to get? And then he gets in my car, puts my seat back, takes his shoes off. I've got his feet all over my dashboard as I'm driving. I'm just like, dude, And then the hotel's in Doncaster, and he wants to go to Barnsley. He's like, I don't want to wrestle in a singles match tonight. I don't want to wrestle a pack tonight. I want to go to a tag team match. Can't we do a tag team match? Can't you talk to Steve Corino? Talk to Steve Corino for me, will you please? Well, just talk to him. And I'm thinking, great. So I said to Steve Corino and the promoter, I'm like, he's on about doing a tag team match, and Corino's like, it's booked. And I'm like, well, he's going to come and find you and talk to you about it. And anyway, it got worked out. I wasn't there when they worked it out. And then it was like, we'd finally got back to the hotel after the show in Barnsley. We'd gone across back to Doncaster. It's about like a 25-minute journey. And we've got to the hotel, and I'm just sort of getting to sleep, and there's a knock at my door. It's Teddy Hart. I want to go and get Takeo Mori some ice. It's like, why do you want to go and get Takeo Mori some ice? And I'm just thinking, I've got to be up at 6 a.m, and this is like maybe nearly 1 o'clock already. I've got to take some guys back to the airport. I was taking Corino back to the airport. So I'm thinking, I just don't want to do it. Anyway, I said, oh, well, I don't know if there's anywhere open right now to get ice. And that was genuine. I didn't know at that point if there was anywhere to go, Anyway, he left. And I just told Corino, because Steve Corino, by the way, great guy, absolutely gent of a guy. And he always had my back with everything. He really did respect me. He helped me out so much. And I told him, and I said, look, he keeps coming to my door or he's asking for different things and strange things. And they said, don't worry. He said, just don't answer the door to anyone else. And then I had another knock at my door. And I said, oh, who is it? And he went, it's Teddy Hart. And I'm thinking, Anyway, I looked through the people, and there's Steve Corino just wetting himself laughing. And I'm like, you dick, like, you dick. But it was funny. It was funny. So, yeah, some fun stories with Steve Corino. But yeah, Teddy Hart was certainly, great talent. Honestly, great match that he had with Pac. If you go on YouTube, type in Teddy Hart versus Pac 1PW, it was a hell of a match. And, he was nice to me. He wasn't rude or anything like that. But he just, like, wanted really weird things and, like, expected me just to sort of go and do all the... Yeah, it was just... Yeah. A little strange.
And then, also, who is your dream meet and greet that maybe you haven't met yet?
Well, I've got two. Technically one's in wrestling-ish. My one slightly outside of wrestling is Mr. T. I know he's been in wrestling, but I'd love to meet Mr. T. Legend of a guy. And then I think Steve Austin would be the main one.
Why is it Mr. T? Like, what is it that
I was
interested
a
you?
huge A-Team fan.
A-
I love the crossover
A-Team?
with the wrestling.
Okay.
And I've always followed everything he's sort of done. He even did a home video clip show here in the UK, a bit like You've Been Framed. You know, when people send the videotapes in of them messing up and they get money for it. Like home video, and he would commentate over the top of it, and even that was funny. And just love Mr. T. I think he's great. Would love to meet him. And I know he's just started doing conventions. I think he's just done one in Dallas. So Steve Austin would be my wrestling meet and greet. Yeah, love Steve Austin. Would like everyone, I'd love to sit down and have a beer with him.
He still looks like, when I seen him in WrestleMania, that appearance he made, he still looks like he's in pretty good shape even for his age. Surprisingly.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's great. And then another one, I would think Jim Cornette. Love Jim Cornette.
I did meet Jim Cornette actually. He was with Bobby Heenan. Remember him and Heenan were doing the things together? He was in Maryland when I was in Maryland, and I was with Luxury Lane, right? Keaton, big Charlie Lane, who's huge now, right? Big guy. He's big. And Jim Cornette at the time was involved with TNA, I think, and he's looking at Lane. He's like, "Are you interested in getting back into it again? I could use you," because Lane has the look, right? Yeah, so Jim Cornette was funny. He was very, very funny, even outside the elements. He's just a funny guy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's someone I'd definitely love to sit with and just chat to. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is just kind of following up to what Keaton was talking about with Bubba Ray. Darren Keaton's dad saying that Bubba actually cursed and said to a kid, "I'm not effing saying that." He was actually angry with Devon for saying it. Apparently, so
Yep.
I think Devon has to keep him in check a lot of the times. I think you sometimes hear about it, and Devon's got to be the one that sort of overcompensates for how Bubba actually is. So it's not good. I mean, the thing is, you're going there, you're getting paid. At the end of the day, I've always been a big believer if somebody's paying you to do a job, you do it to the best of your ability. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right, especially if you're being paid for it.
A cleaner, whatever you do in life. The bottom line is, if you're going to get paid, and what's he doing? What is he doing? He's making people happy. He's signing autographs and he's taking some pictures. It's not hard to write. It is not hard to write, and it's not hard to be nice to people. He's worked in the WWE, which is a highly, highly professional company, and a lot of the WWE talents, are a lot nicer than some of the others when I've met them in the past. And you can tell they've worked in WWE in a professional environment for a long time. And then, and you just think, for a legend that he is, fair play to him. He's done some really good stuff. He's so snappy to people, and it makes it uneasy. It does make it uneasy to go up to people like that. When I'm paying you, you should make the experience uneasy for me.
Yeah.
So
that's for sure. And then Darren wants to know, Crusher and Keaton, who are your favorite meet and greets? So Keaton, who's your favorite?
So for me, surprisingly, this guy's one of my favorite wrestlers ever, Hornswoggle. When I first started watching wrestling, he was the guy who I've always watched and stuff. So not even just as a wrestler, a lot of people don't know that he actually could wrestle. That guy could actually wrestle. If you've seen him on the independent scene, but it was so good meeting him. He's been one of my dream meet and greets, always, and it was so good meeting him in person. I've been seeing the guy who couldn't speak. The wee gimmick Hornswoggle leprechaun who couldn't speak, to actually getting to meet the guy and talk to him, which was pretty cool.
That's cool. And I think my favorite meet and greet has got to be Nick Bockwinkel, only because he was so professional with me. I was at the convention and I just wanted to, he had the actual AWA. So there's a story about Nick. When Stan Hansen wrecked the AWA belt and it was sent back and run over by a truck, I'm sure you guys all know that story. And Vern was disgusted with the belt and he threw it in the garbage. And later that day, Nick Bockwinkel took that belt out of the garbage and he kept it. He never told anybody. He just kept it. And then years later, he went and he had it restored. So he actually had the real AWA belt, the nice one. So I got it. I had to get my picture with that. Even though I'm at this convention for a convention, I had to get my picture with Nick. And so Nick, I had my book with me, and Nick was familiar. I think I told you, Keaton, he was familiar with our story, right? That's what we did. So I had my book, and I had to get up to get my picture with them, and I paid for it and everything because I just wanted to get a picture with that belt. Because you get to hold the belt and everything, and I was just being a mark. I had to. So I got to hold that AWA belt, and Nick's like, "Do you want?" He goes, "How about I hold your book and you hold the belt?" So he held my book for me in the picture with the belt, and so I got a picture with Nick holding my book and me holding his belt. And I still have it. I mean, that's my favorite picture with Nick, and he was such a nice guy. Very just professional, just like he was just like the gimmick. Nick Bockwinkel.
That's very cool. I met Nick in 2011 when I did the Atlanta Legends convention. He was older there, and he was a little slower, bless him.
Yeah.
But what a nice guy, really nice guy. He was just walking around the hotel. These conventions are fantastic. They're a few days long each. And we bumped into a couple of times, and I just started talking to him, asked him for a picture, and he was so accommodating. Very nice guy, very nice guy.
Yeah, he was just very nice. Yeah, that's what I can say about him too. And let's see. Then we got this. Then I'm all caught up on questions. Keaton is the last one. What was the average 1 PW size of crowd? Is it still going? What does he mean by 1 PW?
So that was the company I used to work for.
Okay.
It stood for One Pro Wrestling.
Okay.
We got like between 1,500 and 2,000 in the Doncaster Dome when we used to do it, and then it disappeared around 2007, 2008, and it emerged again in was it 2023? But it only lasted for a few shows. Unfortunately, the owner, again, shady is the word to describe him, unfortunately. And I had a lot of time for him. I did have and he had a vision, but unfortunately didn't know how to manage the money side of things at all.
Where was the promotion based out of?
Doncaster in England.
In England, okay.
Yeah, Doncaster, England. And so when we came back in there as well, we had some really big crowds again. It was like 1,800 in the Doncaster Dome, I think. Something around there. So, I mean, the place itself was awesome. Everyone, whoever wrestled there, loved it. It was, we saw ourselves as like the English ECW at one point back in the day. And the regular talents that we had Abyss as a regular talent, Corey Graves, they all said, Steve Corino, they all said how much they loved that venue. The venue was just awesome. The atmosphere was just sick. It really was good. So yeah, no, it's not good anymore. Unfortunately, it finished in. We did 4 shows in 2023. Unfortunately, same thing happened again.
Yeah.
And when you were saying there that you were involved in it, like you were part of 1PW, what exactly did you do?
When it came back, I was just literally the person that would get the international talent to and from the hotels, and then do a little bit of ringside security if I needed to. There was nothing more than that at that point. I helped out, like set the ring up and just do backstagey kind of jobs, but they were less because they had more people involved this time, so there was less for me to do. I'd help out where I could, but my main job was making sure that the international talent like Rob Van Dam, we had Christopher Daniels, we had Rhino, as you saw in there, Ruby Soho, Matt Cardona, John Morrison. I was basically there to pick them up and make sure they got there on time and got from the hotels to the arena and back.
I suppose it's kind of an important job as well. You're getting international wrestlers over. A lot of places couldn't do that, random indie company. So it actually is kind of an important job as well.
Yeah,
well, you gotta have somebody you can trust for that kind of stuff. You don't want just anybody picking up international talent.
And that was the thing. So the day I picked up Teddy Hart, Sterling James Keaton and Corey Graves was picked up by somebody else, and the person had gone behind him in the airport and started playing his entrance music on his phone on his ringtone, and he picked him up, and he was like a bit of a what they call a mark. And they were just like, why didn't you pick us up? And I'm like, well, I was doing that, but why has he sent that guy? And what the promoter had started doing is picking fans to go and do it because they would do it for free. They didn't
Yeah.
charge fuel money, so they would do it for free. But of course, then it makes the wrestlers feel awkward because they can't talk like they want to talk, and just be themselves because they feel like they've got this person peppering them with questions. I just with the wrestlers, I never ever asked them about the career. It didn't matter who they were. I had some funny story. I had Samoa Joe in my car, and I just started talking to. It was only a short journey back to the hotel, maybe 10 minutes, nothing more than that. And I just goes, "Oh, how have you been since the last time I saw you? Have you been up to anything interesting?" And he goes, "Man, you should know. I went to the Snakes on a Plane premiere, And he's just talking to me about a film premiere that he'd been to.
Sure.
I would never start saying, "Oh, you're matching TNA. Oh, I love that when you did this with
Right.
AJ Styles," because they don't want to hear that. They
No,
hear
they
that from
don't.
the fans,
You're
and
absolutely right.
you know that. And so I'm just
Mhm.
cool with them. I'm talking to him about the family. I mean, Ruby Soho, her mother's a teacher. I'm a teacher. We got talking about being a teacher.
Yeah.
I didn't start saying, "Oh, what's AEW like? What's Tony Khan like?" Blah blah blah, because they don't want to hear that, and that there's an element of mistrust there if you send someone like that to pick them up. So it is a job I did take really seriously, and just to make sure that they felt happy. There's a point of contact if they need somebody. I'm there, and they can trust me.
You're right with that because, like, remember I told you Abdullah the Butcher liked us? Well, the reason was because we didn't talk wrestling with him. We talked about his restaurant and and other things that it was in his life currently, and that's of interest to him. And so he took. So then when it came to the end of the day and we asked, "Hey, can we get our picture?" He's like, "Absolutely." And we got our picture, and no problem. Other wrestlers would come up to Abdullah, and Abdullah would say it's $10. He would charge anybody $10 for that picture. We got it for free. Why? Because we didn't mark out with him. We just talked like a person to him.
Yeah.
And that's what you're right when you say that. They don't want to. They get that all the time, so they just want to have a normal conversation.
Yeah, and that was it. I mean, that was the same with Lance Archer, Lance Hoyt from AEW, the Med Hot Monster, great guy. We had him over, let's say, at 1PW in Lincoln, and I just saw him in the hotel, and I said, "I'll be the guy that's taking you to the to the venue tomorrow, whatever." And then James Storm was there as well, and he's like, "Oh, I just want to go and get some fish and chips." And so I was like, "Yeah, let's go and do that then." And we got in my car. We went walking first of all. We walked that, but then I said, "We can get in my car if you want. We can go wherever." But we never once talked wrestling. If they talk wrestling, fair enough. But
Sure.
not like the amount of times they even talk wrestling between themselves was so minimal. They'd tell stories about the odd thing that happened, but it was more just general life. We're talking about a farm or the cars or where they've been. Not, "Oh, you should do this," and "I think they should do this in wrestling and this," because that's stuff they talk all about all the time. They're just normal people, and you've got
Yeah.
to treat them as normal people. Otherwise, if you start marking out and asking weird questions or whatever, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right. You're right. If they bring it up, it's one thing, but you definitely don't want to start the conversation like that. I mean,
No. I mean, if
yeah.
you're at a convention, then feel free to ask those questions because you're paying to ask those questions.
Sure.
You go up to meet somebody, you want to go and ask them, compliment them on a match and say, "How did you feel at that point?" Or one of these Q&As that, like, Inside the Ropes do really well. Yeah, ask that because that's exactly what you're there to do. But
Right.
when I'm backstage with them, I'm not asking those questions.
Exactly. And then a couple more comments come in. Mighty Molly says, "Did I see Session Moth Martina in your pics?"
Yeah, you did. Yeah, she her promo photos are brilliant. She puts a number on. She puts "call me" with a question mark and a heart, and then she'll put a fake mobile number on. But it's quite funny. But when you ask her for a picture, she always says, "Grab my leg," and she does that funny pose. Yeah, she's a lot of fun.
And then here's one question then for I don't know. I think this one would apply to Keaton because I don't think you can have a beer, Keaton. But did you ever get out for a beer with any of the talent after the conventions? And who did you swap numbers and emails, etc., with, or stay in touch with, or I get it? Did you get any?
Yeah.
Did any of that happen from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So after the actual For the Love of Wrestling conventions, I mean the shows I did with 1PW, as I've alluded to, I've talked about when we went out with Lance Archer, There was another guy with us, and then there was James Storm, and then there was Nash Carter. He was called Nash Carter NXT. We'd all gone out and done like crazy golf and had like loads of drinks with afterwards. We stayed in Lincoln. We was in this hotel and we sort of having drinks there. But in terms of keeping in touch with people, it's like anything. When you don't talk to people for a long time, they forget you, and you just kind of drift apart. Like Corey Graves, we were friends for a long time. He still follows me on Twitter, and like I would send him the odd message, but it's very few and far between that he ever sort of replies it. I guess he doesn't even look at him. I guess he's so busy. Pac was a really good friend of mine. Ben, great guy. I actually encouraged him to go and ask for his first pay rise off 3CW because he needed a bit of extra fuel money, and they weren't giving him it. And now look where he is. And he supported me when I was becoming a teacher. He was asking, "How's it going? Are you getting anywhere?" So we kept in touch for quite a while, but then again, it just died off. He went to Dragon Gate in Japan, and then he went over to the States. He went to NXT. And what was really, really cool is he actually became the first ever NXT tag team champions with Corey Graves, which they're like two of my best friends, and like they became tag champs. And, it was so cool. Steve Carino and I kept in touch for the longest time, but once he went to WWE, they seemed to stop talking. I don't know if WWE tell them to get off the socials or don't talk, or if that's just a thing, you don't talk to people.
I just wonder if they just get too busy. I think they maybe just get too busy and overwhelmed. Maybe.
Yeah, it could easily be that. Yeah. And it's more than likely that. Yeah. So, and I say I don't hold any grudges from any of them not speaking anymore, because you do that with anyone else anyway. If you don't talk to someone for a while, you just drift apart, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
And I dare say if I saw any of those guys again, it'd be a hug. How are you doing? How have you been? It'd be nice. Jerry Lynn, for example, love Jerry Lynn. Used to talk to him all the time. Never exchanged numbers with him, but I saw him at the convention last year in Charlotte, and he remembered me. I went up to him and I said, "Do you remember me?" And he says, "The accent, I know exactly who you are." And we sort of hugged and embraced, and it was a really cool moment. Really cool moment at the convention. There was a few people like, "Who's this guy?" And it was really nice, and we had a nice chat. And
I remember Jerry Lynn when I was working with Eddie Sharkey. Jerry Lynn was training at the time, so I would spend a lot of time. I was already done with. See, an old school training is so different than it is now. I was trying to tell Keaton and all these guys this. Like now, their training never ends. It's just ongoing. That's how it is for these guys nowadays. But back in the day, you go through 6 months, maybe 9, maybe a year, but usually 6 to 9 months, and your training was done, and you were now in doing it, right? So you didn't have ongoing training.
No, it's continuous development these days, isn't it?
Yeah, now they're continually training. But my point, though, is I was already done with my part of the training with it. But I would always have to go and meet up with Eddie to get tickets or whatever the case may be, and I go on this training. Jerry Lynn was, he was training at the time, so I run into him all the time. And he was on a lot of those cards I was on with PWA back in the 89 and 90s. So yeah, he was always a nice guy, though. Jerry Lynn, very professional. Like he
is.
Yeah, and he never forgot where he came from. Like I remember when he was doing ECW, he came back and did some local shows on the local cable stuff, and no problem. He would do that kind of stuff.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me. I think, and there was one more, bless him. I've got to mention him because he was a really, really good guy. Tracy Smothers. He was on my Facebook. I actually got a private message for him a day before he passed. And I can prove that, not that I would need to, but I'm just saying, like, it was just phenomenal. I couldn't believe it. He was so ill with what he'd got, and I just sent him a message saying, because he'd put something on Facebook about, Father Time is undefeated, and Mother Nature's a bitch, and I just sent him a well wish. I just said, I'm really thinking about you, and I remember our times back in 1PW, and we'd chat occasionally. And he would message back, and he messaged back saying, "Thank you, I'm trying." And that was the last I ever heard from him. And within a day, he passed. But great guy. Loved listening to Tracy. I learned loads just listening to him. Really, really, really clever wrestler. Really tough guy as well.
The only thing I can talk about going out for beer is like when we did Maryland convention, and all the guys, the wrestlers and everything in the convention would all meet up in the hotel bar down in the kind of like the bar area down there. And at that point, the convention's not going on, and now the guys just want to talk with each other because they haven't seen each other for a long time. And we were kind of part of that, and we would get to talking with them. And I remember they were really interested into hearing about some of our things, but I remember fans trying to come in and get in and start asking for this, an autograph here, this. And I remember some of the guys like, guys, can you just give us a minute here? We're trying to, like, we want to go over some things. Just, we'll get back to you. They were getting kind of frustrated with the fans. I remember seeing that. Did you ever see anything like that happen when it's outside the convention hours?
Yeah, like at one, yeah. So we're at a hotel in Doncaster, and Doncaster's a tough old place. It's a really tough old place. And we had the couple of drunk. I was with Charles Skaggs, Too Cold Scorpio, and yeah, we had a couple of guys going, "Is he a wrestler?" I was just like, "Well, we're just here." And he said, I'm gonna ask him if it's fake," and I was like, mm, you know. And they're trying to talk to me, and I'm ignoring them, and they're sort of shouting in my ear a bit. And I went, "Oh, we need to just get up there." And he goes, "Who's those guys?" And I said, "Oh, they're just asking if wrestling's fake." And he turns around, he goes, "Say what?" And he followed with a bit of expletive language, and he stares at him like this, and he says, "Say what?" Mm-mm-mm. And he carried on with his language, and it was just like, ooh. But that was like that was something or nothing. They just sort of walked away. But yeah, in the bar, like you say, we'd go for a couple of beers afterwards. You got fans in there trying to talk to them, but the British fans are quite respectful in that manner. The actual fans, they'll wait their turn to speak to them. I've not seen anything too major apart from that. And when I was in the convention last year in Charlotte, where you seen that picture of myself and El Hebner and my friend, I was just at the bar trying to sort of get in because, as you can see, we're sat at the bar and somebody's not in the seat and I'm trying to get a drink. And I just said, "Oh, hi, El, how you doing?" And he goes, "I'm good. How are you?" And I said, "I'm really good, thanks." He goes, "Where are you from?" Obviously, the accent. Just got chatting to him, and I did start chatting to him because he was chatting to me, but I wasn't. If he was talking to somebody else, I didn't say anything, and then we just got drinking with him quite a lot. He drinks a lot, and so we had a good night. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, more questions. Scenic Spot says, what do you guys think about the WWE AAA acquisition?
Do you want to go for this first, Keaton, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll go next.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is the truth? I mean, WWE seem to bury a lot. It doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter. I mean, some people say they like the ECW rebirth. I didn't. They do. They've got a poor history. I mean, I know they've been. It's new ownership, whatever. They've got a poor history of keeping things going. I just don't think they understand those intangible elements of a cultural dimension like AAA as well. This isn't an American wrestling company you're buying, and they're pretty poor at keeping an American wrestling company going, never mind anything else. I personally, I'd like to be wrong, don't get wrong, I'd like to be wrong. And I thought when Wells Collide show was quite good, actually. I thought it was fairly decent. But I don't see a future for it personally. I think they'll push it every now and then, but it'll drop off unless they allow it to carry on running with different people running it in Mexico and whatever. I don't know how that's going to work, but just going off past history, I don't think it's going to turn out very well. I really hope I'm wrong, because AAA's got a hell of a heritage.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there, obviously, but in my opinion, I believe that obviously Vince McMahon, well, Triple H just turned it into something completely different when Vince was running it. Don't get me wrong, when he was promoting Hulk Hogan and all to start WrestleMania, he was going really good, but near the end, we saw some very random storylines. Austin Theory being his top guy just wasn't looking very good, and then when Triple H took over, you were seeing proper wrestling, good wrestling matches and stuff. Don't get me wrong, there's still some wrong releases that Triple H made, and some wrong decisions, but I believe that this AAA movement is actually going to make WWE and AAA look better. It's getting at the bigger screens, and Lucha Libre is something that it's a key element of wrestling. No, I think they're the best wrestlers in the world. No one could do the stuff that they can do. Like some people say, "Oh, WWE is the best in the world." No, they are not. Lucha Libre is literally the best thing that wrestlers can offer. No one can do the stuff that they can do. So if it brings that side to American wrestling, obviously your man, Mr. Iguana, who I really like, is now one of the most sold T-shirts in WWE. It's benefiting WWE for the fans as well as it's benefiting AAA. So I think that I think if it's still going the way it's going, it'll turn out quite successful.
I mean, I don't know. I think I kind of with Paul though in a way. I mean, their track record of acquisitions, even from back when they got WCW, was horrible. Like they just never used it right. So until they're just gonna have to prove it to do. I got to see it happen for me to buy into it. Like I think they can. I mean, look at how Bischoff, how he handled bringing in the luchadors and stuff for he actually, that was a nice division he had there when he started bringing that into WCW. He actually made it work. So I think it can be done, but it's just I got such a bad taste in my mouth for what everything that WWE has touched as far as acquisitions go. I'm kind of there.
Well, to build on what you've said there, Crusher, I think what they'll do is they'll strip the assets of AAA. They'll bring you Mr. Iguana over and they'll sign him to a WWE contract. And you won't see him in AAA anymore. They'll take the ones that they like out of it.
Yeah, just like they did with WCW.
What they'll do. That's just what they'll do. So you'll see the guys you want to see. You'll go see all these great AAA wrestlers. But if you want to go and watch the AAA promotion, it'll be watered down because they've cherry picked who they want to pick. I was actually hoping that Sam Adonis would get a break with WWE now. Corey Graves' brother, he's wrestled for AAA for a long time. He's wrestled for CMLL. I think he's still wrestling out there now for them. And he's so talented. I mean, he learned Spanish to cut promos in Spanish, which I think, how many guys actually do that? And I would love to see him get a break. But
I think Adonis, that was the guy I think that Nathan was going to potentially bring over to NIPW for a show.
He is, I believe, isn't he?
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. So that would have, his brother. Yeah, I remember. It didn't work out for that particular time, but I'm sure it could happen down the line again. Yeah. So, for at least that was just that name. When you mentioned that name, I remember Nathan talking to me about this guy. So
he's a really intelligent wrestler. I mean, he wrestled in the UK for a good while. He left the UK. A couple of issues had gone on there, but I mean, he's such a talented guy. Good guy. Studies old school wrestling. Studies Mexican old school wrestling. Honestly, Keaton, I think he'd probably be one of your favorite wrestlers because he's an American wrestler with a lucha sort of head on his shoulders.
And then here's a question from Darren. He wants to know, Paul, where can we get one of those super cool shirts you were wearing when we first met you?
Oh, I presume he means the Hasbro figure, sort of Hawaiian-looking shirt. It was one of the Chinese, like AliExpress websites, I think. But you can find the official version somewhere. I believe mine was a bootleg because I've seen people with them before, and theirs is a more sharper print than mine. Mine looks more blurred. So I don't know is the answer. I genuinely don't know.
And then Darren says, it's bringing the lucha style to the masses. Have you got a AAA Worldwide favorite wrestler of all time?
I mean, I love Conan as well, And then Psychosis, obviously Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
You look at as you say, Crusher, when you look at that WCW division back in the day, how good was that division? Psychosis, and you had Eddie Guerrero. I mean, it was just phenomenal.
It was great.
That's a hard question, Darren.
There was appeal. Like I remember watching it, like, and this is cool. I'm watching this because I'm seeing this here, and I'm not seeing it in the WWE. So this is kind of a cool thing here, because we were seeing. That was the first time I was introduced to a lot of that technique. I seen a little bit of it with the Guerrero brothers when they came into the AWA back at Super Clash. That was my very first having my eyes on it, where I thought, gosh, because these guys are doing things that I've just never seen done in wrestling. So it was like, it really stood out then. But then when they did it in WCW, it was like that tenfold, right? It was like massive. Like it was a whole division.
Tough question. But yeah, it's got to be one of those guys. I would think, Psychosis, Rey Mysterio, Conan. Yeah.
Yeah. So Keaton, what else we got? Any more questions? We're getting towards the end of our show.
Yeah, well, as we're wrapping up, getting towards the end of the show, I want to know what's next for Paul Kreese.
you know what? When you first approached me and said, "Oh, I want to do a podcast," I'm like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? I'm a bit of a technophobe at times. You know, I'm not afraid to do it, obviously. And I teach. I'm not afraid of sort of being in front of people and talking. But I love collecting, and I've listened to the Major Wrestling Figure podcast for a long time, which is Matt Cardona's podcast, and there's a couple of other ones out there, and it's got me thinking. I've been, saying to a couple of my friends, "Now, I'd love to do like just a pure wrestling figure based one, because that's my passion." But I'm unsure. I'm unsure if, or even like maybe like Karate Kid version one, but that's more niche. Wrestling figure one you can maybe do, but I'd have
I
to
think
let.
there's definitely a market for a wrestling figure podcast. There's enough collectors out there, figures.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's some really good ones out there already, but then you might have to go in with a different angle, present it differently, or do something slightly different. But hey, you never know. You never know. I might have to pick some tips off of you guys and see how, because I know you run it. You run a podcast weekly, and obviously you have different guests coming on and that kind of thing. And I think that really works. I like that idea.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll be chatting to you a bit and seeing how
And
I
there's
can
different ways you can do it. Like Keaton goes every week usually. And when I do rewind, it's every other week. Forwards every other week in between that. I do with Ricky, and then I'll be doing like a monthly one with NAPW. So you can do podcasts like however it works easiest for you. Like you could do it monthly. You could do it whatever's your schedule. And it doesn't have to be live like we do it either. You can do them pre-recorded. So it's just many ways to do it.
It's all stuff like that I've just not really even thought about. Like, yeah, I'll probably do it monthly. It's something I'd be talking to and going, "What do you reckon? This is what I want." I might come to you and say, "This is what I want to do. How am I? What's my vehicle?"
Right. Sure. Yeah. And it's look, I didn't know a thing about doing podcasts. Like I had my friend of mine, Dave, who started this with me when we did NWF Rewind. He's like, "Let's do a podcast." I'm like, I have no idea how to do a podcast. I said, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I don't know what they use. I don't know. It's really not that complicated once you start looking into it. There's a lot of different tools you can use that we can make it work for you. And Keaton's learning this as we go.
Of
So
course,
Yep.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, we've been learning stuff about what you do before we go live and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
that's cool. But in terms of what next, in terms of conventions, I've got the one in Charlotte coming up. So if you've got any American viewers, I will be in Charlotte at the end of July for it's called The Gathering.
The Gathering, yeah, it's the biggest one. They do it every year. So you're
Yeah,
going to go to
Tomorrow
that. If you see Carol Castle there, say hi for me. She's for the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame, and she invited me to come. Yeah, she invited me to come with her to be part of her booth, but I had too much going on. I went out to Ireland and seen these guys, and so I just had too much going on this year, and I just couldn't do I couldn't do the Gathering with her. But I was going to go out there with her. But yeah, she'll have a booth. She'll have a booth out there.
Oh, cool! I'll definitely see her, I dare say, because you get to meet everyone because
Yeah.
you're there in the hotel. And it lasts. I think this one's lasting 5 days. It's registration's Wednesday, finishes Sunday. So it's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun one. You've been to the Gathering before?
Yeah, I went last year.
Yeah,
So
so
it was one last year,
they're
and then I
fun.
went to the 2011. It was Greg Price that did it back then, and it was the Mid Atlantic Legends Convention.
Mhm.
And we went to Atlanta for that one. That's the one where I met Nick Bockwinkel, and I met Bobby the Brain Heenan. That was another great meet and greet. Wow. So yeah, this will be my third one.
Yeah. Was Bob, when you met Bobby, was he still able to talk pretty good, or did he already have it where he was in his worst stage?
He was extremely hard to understand. Yeah,
Okay,
really
so
hard
he
to
had that
understand.
other episode that happened with him. Yeah.
He was so nice though, and I said, "I've come all the way because of you." I always wanted to meet Bobby Heenan, and he was almost my favorite commentator and manager. And I got when it was announced, we were umming and ahhing about going, and then when he was announced, it's like, we've got to go. I really want to go. And so when I told him you were one of the main reasons that I came out here, you were the one that made my decision. He sort of, his eyes lit up, and he said something. I couldn't make out what he said, but he was either making a joke, which he could have been, or he was happy about it. But he was a lovely guy.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and I know that when we seen him in Maryland, they asked the question. They had him talk about if he can recollect when he got shot at. There was a time in the 70s when he got shot at Somebody in the crowd shot at him, and he told the story. You know, he remembered it, and he's like, "Yeah, this is." They never hit me, but they hit about, they hit, I don't know, 3 or 4 people in the crowd. He fired the gun from way up in the stands, and they never caught the guy. And
Wow.
so, yeah, Heenan was so over that somebody actually got a gun out and tried to shoot him.
Yeah, I mean, you hear stories of people throwing batteries at wrestlers and spitting on them, but to
Yeah.
actually shoot somebody, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
that was crazy. Well, Keaton, what do we got? I know there's always that one question you like to ask. But I don't know if
Yep.
you're going to ask it.
So I'll try. I'll try to kind of I'll try to kind of make the question more to do with this instead of wrestling. So, what advice
Yeah.
would you give to someone trying to show their collection to the world of AAA, CMLL, or whatever collection it is? What advice would you give to them?
I mean, a lot of people are giving me advice and say you need an Instagram account. You need to start showing it off properly. And I've never really done it, and I think that's something that I do need to take the advice of. I need to take that advice. But for me, if you, I mean, I have so many complete different collections. For the Love of Wrestling have been really good with me because they've given me that platform to display it all. And I would just say do stuff like that. If you want to go to toy fairs or anything to display it. But certainly, yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, if you're anywhere around the world and you've got a local wrestling convention coming up and you just want to go there, ask if you can just display. You add something to the event by displaying stuff. You're one of the attractions of that show. You might not be a major one to some people, but to some people you are. People want to come and see that. Because one of the major attractions when I first went to For Love Wrestling was James's Hasbro collection. That's one of the things I wanted to see. Straight after I'd met the wrestlers, I wanted to see that. So I believe, I like to think a little bit that I add just a little bit to that convention, and I'm sure that if you have a collection yourself that you want to display, you'll add a little bit to whatever convention you go and display at, because you are someone that you actually hold the crowd inside the place because they come and talk to you, because you've been to events in the past where you go to an event, you've done everything there is to do, and you leave. But if you're there and you can hold people in to maybe even spend more money on refreshments or whatever, you're keeping them in there. You're doing a little job for them and you're helping them out and you're getting something out of it. So if you can, try and display something, either that or you do it virtually, or you might even do a podcast. Who knows?
Yeah. And I guess there's one question. Normally we're done with questions, but Darren does have one. I guess we'll end with this question, Paul, before we go, and then we'll just have you stand by with us, and then Keaton and I are just gonna kind of wrap the show up after this. But let's do this last question. That's going to be for all of us. Commonly on this panel isn't just lovers of wrestling. You all love Cobra Kai, because we're all Cobra Kai fans here. Tell us your favorite characters in Cobra Kai. So who wants to start? Paul?
Okay. Well, I've got to say Kreese, because that's been my nickname for so long.
Yeah.
There were too many Pauls in one PW, and I remember the promoter going, "Oh, I don't just want to call you Paul. Haven't you got a nickname?" So I said, "Well, I have been known as Kreese in the past." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Karate Kid." And they went, "Right, well, you're Kreese," and that's how I got to be known. I've got to say Kreese, and then I think I was talking to Keaton earlier and said about Chosen just before I went on air. I said, hopefully he's coming over soon. So, I mean, obviously I like Johnny and I like the main ones, but I've got to say Kreese and maybe Chosen.
Kreese. Keaton, who's your favorite of the series?
It's not really in doubt. I have all our favorites, but my favorite of all time is Johnny Lawrence.
Johnny?
I think his character in Cobra Kai, like when he first came into the Karate Kid, he was a big bad villain, and then they kind of showed what Johnny's life was like after it, after the Karate Kid, and how he was living after that one kick, and he became a sensei to Miguel Diaz, and he had some funny moments, some down moments, and also it kind of showed more Johnny Lawrence in the Karate Kid series. So he's probably one of the best actors there as well, I think. And then people that didn't really make the list, but I would still say they're one of my favorites. I think their characters are just so good in Cobra Kai. Like, I actually hate them. When you watch the show, you actually hate them because they're so good. And that's Terry Silver and John Kreese.
Yeah.
So they're probably the best.
Well, for me, it has to be Miguel, because the way he anchored that first episode, his character with Johnny, just that whole twist on the story. Miguel I always have a spot for Miguel, and he's a great actor. I like Miguel, but then the other guy I like, and I don't even remember his name because we didn't see him a whole lot. He was in the last season. Remember, he's the one that got stabbed, and he ended up dying.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Quan.
Quan, yeah, Quan. And I was thinking, like with Quan, he is the perfect heel in wrestling. If you could take that character and make it a wrestler, man, the attitude he had and everything, his personality, he would be so over as a heel.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. He was brilliant.
Yeah, because he was like, you just loved to hate him in that series. The way he the way he was, his acting ability there was great for the promo side.
Complete douche, but he was like a douche that could back it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great character.
And you know some Cobra Kai characters, don't you? Like
through doing the custom figures, I've managed to meet a lot of them and befriended a couple of them. Befriended the Coves, because there was Jesse Covey's son that played in one of the flashbacks. He was Captain David in one of the flashbacks. Martin Cove, he was just so pleased to meet us, and I gave him his figure. Great guy, best meet and greet I've ever had outside of wrestling, without a doubt. And then the William Christopher Ford has been a long-term friend of Chris and I, who met the figures. He plays Dennis. He was the guy that was on the ship right at the end when it blew up. He was Terry Silver's henchman.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the actual coordinators of the stunts, because he in Karate Kid 3, because he is actual sensei himself. He runs Kaizen Dojo out in California. And when he made his first appearance, he'd been teasing us for ages. He sent me a promo photo, and I'll send you a picture of it. And he's there, and he's got like the Japanese screens in the background. You could tell he's in like a mock-up of the Miyagi Dojo, and he's there breaking the bonsai tree, and he's there with his long hair, staring into the camera. And he put something like, "Thank you for always sticking by me." And I'm thinking, you've been signed for one of these series. I know you've been signed. You're teasing us. And it was about maybe 18 months, 2 years before it actually came to fruition. But Netflix released them at like 8 a.m. right, to go to work, and it was on a Friday. I think it was the November ones where he made his debut. And my friend Chris had said, "Do you want to know?" And I put, "Just tell me, is he in?" And he said he is. So I quickly messaged him on Messenger, and I said, "A little birdie tells me you're in Cobra Kai," and he sends me a screenshot. He's taken of the scene where he first shows up when they're meant to be in Spain, and he attacks Daniel where the dogs are in the cage, where those cages are. And I'm literally watching it on my TV right here, and I'm messaging him right here. I'm messaging the actor, and I'm watching him debut, and I just thought it was the coolest thing going. So yeah, and that all just came from making him a figure and remembering him. He saw us on Instagram. We messaged him, "Are we okay to make a figure of you? We want to try it." And he was like, "Oh wow, how do you remember me? Great, yeah, please." And within that, he's done so much for us. He's got loads of our figures signed for us. He finally got us the Terry Silver one signed, which was becoming impossible for us. We just didn't have any connections to get him signed at all. And then he went and did it for us. And he actually got us Pat Johnson, the referee, to sign. Now, he had Alzheimer's, bless him, and he passed away a couple of months after he'd signed our figure. And he said he might not be able to write a full message on your figure for you or personalize it, but he'll write Pat Johnson. And we're like, "Hey, that's fine." And there's a picture of Pat Johnson, bless him, holding our figure up. And he said, "We've got it. It just says Pat Johnson at the top." But wow, so Dennis, I've got a lot to thank. Well, William Christopher Ford, I've got a lot to be thankful for him.
Well, that has been fascinating. Well, Paul, it's been a great interview, and I'm glad you came on. I always tell Keaton, I don't know what, I never know anything in the beginning, but I'm always just left fascinated at the end of these interviews. That's why I love doing these with Keaton. So it's been a great show. So if you don't mind, Paul, you can stay with us here. Keaton and I are just gonna wrap the show up in here, and then we're gonna sign off.
Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on with us. Thank you. It's been a fascinating interview, Keaton, once again. I mean, did you get through all your questions? I
always.
know you had a lot of them.
Yeah, I got through all of them.
So we're just gonna kind of tell you what's coming up here. What's coming up first? We got. Is it? Looks like it's going to be a rewind, right? NWF rewind. So over on NWF Wrestling, we're going to look back at studio taping 76. It's whoops. I guess I got to get that comment out of there, don't I? Darren, darn you, you're in the way. There we go. Thursday, July 3rd. We'll be Dixie Dave and myself. We'll be doing the rewind. This is a great show because this is where we got the professional ring. We actually first time using that professional ring, the actual working ring. So that was a big deal. And all the confidence level, as you can imagine, Keaton went up with everybody when you have a proper ring to be in. You know, you actually have a mat that's functioning. It's not that, like, we were used to the ropes, but it was the having hard surfaces to bump on. Now we actually had a ring. So this is cool. And then doing outdoor tapings were so much fun. You guys don't get to do a lot of that in Ireland, do you, with all the rain?
No.
Yeah. Outdoor tapings are fun. This will be a fun one. Looking forward to this show. We'll relive this. And then go back to my media assets. Then the next show then with you, Keaton, and it's a week from Sunday, I believe.
Yep.
It's going to be Pat Tanaka interview. And,
Yeah.
you know, I remember him from the AWA days. You know, I never met him, but and he also worked with Eddie Sharkey a little bit too, I think, in the end. And so it's going to be great. And then what else did he do, Keaton? What else has he done after that?
Yeah, well, most popular in his career, he's been in factions with Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji. He's been managed by Mr. Fuji, one of the greatest managers of all time. He's won tag team championships with the Orient Express. He's been in the Orient Express and won the WWF tag team championships. He's competed for cruiserweight championships against Rey Mysterio on WCW, so he's competing on live television and stuff. So an absolute legend to be getting on here, legend in wrestling. He's done so much in his career, and even I think he's starting. He's done a couple of movies as well, so it'd be great to have him on, an absolute legend on the show. So I can't wait for this one.
You see him with the AWA tag team belt. That was with Paul Diamond, him and the Diamond Exchange. Diamond Dallas Page, their manager. Yeah, that's what I remember those days. Yeah, this will be a great interview. I'm looking forward to this. At least this is a guy I can actually talk with a little bit too with you, Keaton, because I remember him.
Yep.
Back in my 80s heydays of wrestling. And then our next NWF forward, as you know, it's John McCann filling in for Canary Kid right now. And it's going to be me and John. We're going to have talking to Wes Danger with LWF, which is there in England. And he is the LWF Red Rose champion. And so I don't know if you know this, Keaton, but John actually worked a match with this guy at one point in time a while back. So
I've never seen that.
Yeah. So I've asked John, I said, hey, John, do you got any footage? You know, because we always do watch alongs. And I know Wes will be getting me some stuff, but I thought if he has the footage of the match with them two, that'd be kind of fitting to watch.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It was earlier on. And now West, you know, he started, 10 years, he's 17, but he started like 9 or 10 years ago. So he's been at it for a while. You know, Rossi does the junior training over there in England, and he was a part of that. Rossi Roscoe, I believe. So, so it should be a great interview, and I'm sure Ricky's a little jealous. He'd probably love to talk to him. Wes Danger, Ricky always likes talking to the other guys like this. And sorry, Ricky, you're on shore leaving Canada. You're enjoying your time, so it's going to be me and John talking to Wes on this one. And John said too, he goes, well, when we get Wes, I'll make sure I'm on it. I got to be on this one because John really wants to talk to him. So John liked this guy. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's going to be on our next show. Well, I'll have a guest. So our next forward show. So should be fun. So that's what's coming up on the horizon, everybody. So thanks for joining us. And Keaton, been a great show. Any last words?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank everyone for coming in. It was an awesome interview with some really, really good stories from Paul Kreese. So it was an awesome interview.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to the collecting and everything that he does, and there's so many stories there, and then just the stories in general. It was just a great interview. We had a great time.
Yeah.
So, so all right. So until we're live again, whether that be on over on NWF Wrestling or on Keaton's channel, we'll see you when we're live next. Thanks for watching, everybody.